So as a prosecutor, you are literally a rule lawyer.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I am actually, aren't I? Yeah, I'm a rules lawyer.
Welcome to the Redcaps Podcast, a podcast where we dip our caps into the blood of our listeners and we ramble on about old school games. Today's episode is another conversation, and we're going to be talking about low fantasy, low life, and old mage. As you know, no mortal can outrun a red cap. So as always, I hope you can sit back, listen, and enjoy.
All right, folks, I am joined by Steve Grodzicki. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah, Grodzicki. Yeah.
Perfect. From Low Fantasy Gaming and Pickpocket Press. How you doing today, sir?
Very good. Thank you so much for having me, Kevin. It's a pleasure.
I gotta ask, Pickpocket Press. Where's the name come from? I love it. I think it's I love the logo and everything all about it. But
I don't
where
know.
Does that come from?
I don't know where it came from. It just was. I thought it was a nice little rebellious name in a way, being a pickpocket. No, I don't know. It just came from somewhere or other. But I can tell you where the logo came from. Daniel Commercy has done all our logos, including the Pickpocket Press one, which I really like.
Yeah, it's excellent. Plus, the alliteration's nice too with Pickpocket Press, and it kind of just rolls really well.
It's good until the other day I said, "Oh, can I put that on the?" And I just abbreviated it to capital P, capital P. I said, "Can I put that on the?" Thinking in my head, Pickpocket Press site. Community content thing, and the guy went ha 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 PP, and I went, oh yeah, I never thought of that. But so aside from that downside, it's pretty good.
And if people can't tell by hearing the accent, you're down in Australia right now.
Yes.
So given our time zone difference, can you tell me what the future's like? So it's Tuesday for you right now. Can I get the lottery numbers? What do I have to look forward to tomorrow?
I don't have the lottery numbers. I can tell you what can I tell you? Not much. The weather. Oh, no, you'll have different weather anyway. But if you do have similar weather to us, it's actually a pretty good day today.
Yeah. Well, you're just coming into summer. I'm just coming into winter. So I'd probably switch for you right now, I think.
Where are you again? Are you in Canada?
Yeah, I'm in Canada. Exactly.
Yes. Yep.
So
okay, nice.
Yeah, it's we haven't gotten any snow right where I'm at yet, but other parts of Canada definitely have. It's close to time for me to go and swap the tires on my truck and get some winter tires on there. I think because it'll soon be snowy. But
that is actually fun. I've never been to the proper snow. I have to confess, never. I really want to go. I've talked to Steph, my wife, about it. Kids, we all want to go, but it's really expensive actually. Here in Australia to get to the snow, and then anyway, it's a bit. Anyway, one day I will get there.
I kind of have the same thing. My wife and I, we've got our list of places in the world that we wish to vacation to travel off to. Australia and New Zealand are high on my list. And I've never been to a proper desert, although there are deserts much closer to me than obviously, what's taking up most of Australia. But I've never been to a proper desert either. So I would like to go and experience that. I guess I take snow for granted. It's just, it's something that has always been here. And to me, it's at times it's more of a nuisance than it is a joy. But speaking of wives, Pickpocket Press is a husband-wife tandem, is it not?
It is. That's right. So I do most of the core writing, I suppose, if you like, and then Steph is editing. Yeah, she gets the hard part, and layout. And she does a bit of the. I was sort of half on the art, talking to the artists and trying to sort out pictures and things. But no, she definitely has the short end of the stick with the editing, which I just dread. I loathe.
I've heard that from every person who does any writing, that the writing process is the easy part, and then the editing and layout's a whole different artistic manner altogether. But but editing is got to be, you have to be a special mindset, I think, to be able to get through that.
Absolutely. So that's the real slog, of it. It's fun to write up we're writing the setting and we're doing the city and and then over to you, Steph, to make it pretty.
So, before you two started this up or were together, was she big into gaming as well, or was this something that she's grown into by being introduced by you, or did she introduce you to it? How'd that all work?
No, more me roping her into it, frankly. Yeah. Yeah, no, she's never been a big gamer. No, a big reader, but not a big gamer. And I've tried to get her interested in. I've play tested we've got this little board game thing we're mucking around with at the moment, trying to make, and even that Steph was like, "I'm not doing that. I'm not playing that board game. It's not for me." So.
I do want to talk about that board game because that looks really interesting to me here in a little bit. But so how did the whole company start? How did you decide that you're going to get into publishing gaming material, and what was the spark that made you go from having what I assume was probably your own house ruled game with your friends to going, well, I got to publish this so everybody else can see it?
It was really just let me think. I've answered this question a few times, but it was to do with I wanted to play. That's right, Primeval Thule. Do you know the Sasquatch games? It's a sword and sorcery like Conan style setting called Primeval Thule. It came out years ago. Yeah, it's really awesome. And anyway, I wanted to play it, and I went, oh well, I'll play it with 5e. But of course, it's a low magic setting. It's very deadly. It's a lot of wilderness exploration as opposed to anything else. And so I tried to mod 5e. I wrote this low fantasy game, draft, modding a lot of the 5e classes, trying to take the magic out of them because there's so much magic in 5e.
It's a superhero game.
It is really. Yeah. And so there was so much to change. Eventually I went, well, if I'm going to change all that, I may as well change this as well. I don't like that. So I started changing other things. And then I went, I may as well put it out on the internet for free. And then anyway, a few people liked it, picked it up or whatever. And I got enough requests eventually to, people saying, can you make turn it into a hardcover and da-da-da. And so I did. And that's sort of where it all came from. Yeah. So it came from this desire to play a sword and sorcery style game where the setting was already there. Primeval Thule, awesome. And I just wanted a system that better fit that genre. That's what it was. Yeah.
So the first time you got the book done and you printed it off in hard copy and it arrived at your door, how'd that feel? Getting your hands on a hardback RPG book that you had a direct, it's that's your baby. How'd that feel?
It was so nice. I mean, I can't lie. It's really nice. Anytime you get one of these books come in through the mail, which takes forever to get here, by the way, because they're all being printed in either England or US or somewhere. They take a long time to get here, and the shipping's horrendous. But it's awesome. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's always errors. You look through it and go, oh, oops, and then you got to correct it 5 times. But it's good.
Yeah, I feel your pain on the shipping. I can have a book shipped from the anywhere in the US to the border of Canada, to a town literally 2.5 hours from me, just crossing that imaginary line, and the shipping is next to nothing. For it to cross the imaginary line and come into Canada, it's like, yeah, no, I there's been so many times when there's been products I simply haven't bought because the shipping is too ridiculous.
Oh, outrageous. And in recent years, of course, it's gotten so much harder on that side of the fence. Yeah.
So the games that most people would know you for, I guess the game that I know you for, and I assume most people would know you for, is low fantasy gaming. But it's not the only thing that you've got out. You've got a massive bunch of stuff out on DriveThruRPG. How have you found the whole publishing side of things through Kickstarter, whether it's through a Kickstarter or whether it's through DriveThru, or do you do Lulu as well?
We started with Lulu, yeah. So we do have our original LFG, if you like, the 180 page, the shorter version is on Lulu. Yep, still. Oh. So we do have Lulu too. Look, it's a really, I think it's a very approachable way to get published is through DriveThruRPG, Lulu, and Kickstarter as well. Because the thing, I don't know if a lot of people really know this, but with Kickstarter, it it's such a massive platform that it brings a lot of backers to your game just by itself, even if you don't advertise. Because when we did the Low Fantasy Gaming, our first Kickstarter, I don't know how it must have been something like 60% of the backers were just from Kickstarter itself. When you look back at the metadata, yeah. So I was really surprised. And then anyway, and then when you look at other people who've put up blog posts and things, which I will always have a read of if they're talking about Kickstarters and how they approached it, there's always a very large, when you look at the data that they'll present, there's always a very large amount of people who have come from Kickstarter itself. So people who are just checking it every day or whatever, I don't know how exactly it works, but so I think that's something that probably a lot of people don't know. I know that the advice is, look, come to the Kickstarter with a big community and have talked about your game for the last 12 months. And I'm sure that helps. But, to be frank, when we did our first Kickstarter, I don't know how many people exactly had downloaded the free PDF of Low Fantasy Gaming, but it wasn't like heaps and it wasn't thousands of people. It was certainly less than that. And most of the backers, I think, well, as I say, there's something like 60% just came directly from Kickstarter. So yeah, I think if you're thinking about it, there's no downside really. You may as well try. And there's every chance that even if you don't bring, I think, a big community with you, you may still get there. I mean, it depends on your funding goals and all that. But
so did you or Steph have any previous experience in publishing or design, or what is your sort of day job? Like, what was the translation over? Was it just like I hammered away at a keyboard and this came out and here you go?
Yeah, no, nothing much. Well, no, look, my day job is a lawyer. I'm a prosecutor with the Federal Prosecution Service here, or Commonwealth, we call it. Oh, yeah, and so would you in Canada.
Here, yep.
Yeah, Commonwealth Prosecution Service. So I do a lot of writing every day. I'm always writing. I'm a whiz on Word, but I'm terrible with I'm getting better at Photoshop and actually I don't use Photoshop anymore. I use Affinity Photo, the Affinity Suite.
Product
suite. I love it.
Great.
Yeah. Yep. And especially the last 12 months, done a lot of that. So, but yeah, no, I came from, I suppose, a writing background in the sense that is my day job. So that's where it came from, which made it easy for me, I think, to use Word. And I should say, all of our books so far have been made on Word. We do the covers on Photoshop or whatever, or it'll be Affinity Photo in the future. But and I know, I know now from the last 12 to 18 months how awesome the Affinity Photo products are, and I will use them in the future to try and do the layouts, because you can just do so much more. But you can certainly get away with a very awesome looking product just using Word and then tweaking it a little bit, in your PDF program later. Yeah. You can definitely
doing your manuscript mainly in Word is no problem. And then you're just do the manuscript, get your final text right, and then bring it into your layout software afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. I'm sure you can just like cut and paste and then off you go. Yeah. But no, I think the drive-through RPG is really easy. For PDFs, it's very, very easy. For print books, it is a bit trickier. And Lulu, they're both similar in the sense that Steph and I are not professional publishers. There's always little issues to do with ink coverage and other just, bleed. Well, I'm pretty used to bleed and cut lines and all that now, but there is these tricky elements which can take a few, like we probably print about 5 or 6 hard copies of a book before it's right. We'll print one, we'll proof it. No, this is no good. We need to change this color. So there is a bit of a process. It's not just, you print and you're done and it's awesome. It takes a few goes for us anyway, because we're not specialists.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone through Lulu just for like private prints of some of my PDFs, like PDFs that I've purchased elsewhere, and I get Lulu to print them for me. And yeah, if the PDF wasn't intended to be printed through a print service, you got to massage it a little bit and get things the way you want it. So yeah, I've seen that pain as well.
Yeah.
So as a prosecutor, you are literally a rule lawyer.
Yeah, I am actually, aren't I? Yeah, I'm a rules lawyer.
So when we look at LFG, and how it started off as you homebrewing 5e and bringing it down, and then just going, well, I'm going to go all the way with it. Would you call it a rules light game or rules heavy game? Where does it fall in that spectrum? Because in the independent RPG space, you've got, there's multiple axes here of like rules light, rules heavy, narrative, or I don't know what the opposite of narrative would be, more traditional gaming, I guess. But where do you think you find yourself on that big nat chart type idea?
I think it falls into to be fair, it falls into the sort of medium crunch area. I don't really think I think it's relatively light in the sense to run. There are a lot of tables in it, but it's like Dungeon Crawl Classics in that way, where you can use the tables if you want to, or from time to time you might need to roll on a table. But the sort of nitty gritty of playing is quite straightforward. The attribute checks are roll under, the attack rolls are roll high, and there's not really too much else to it other than that. And then it's just, the GM making calls about, is this a strength check, or is it a contest between dex and perception or whatever. And then the attacks are, the attacks are the same as D&D since forever, really. We just tweaked a little bits and pieces of it to give people more options. But because there are more options, I think it probably does fall on the medium crunch side of the fence, yeah.
You were mentioning that you changed some stuff with the combat. So I've not had a game of LFG yet. I've read through the rule book. I've watched friend of the show Jason Hobbs. He's got some plays up on YouTube. So I've seen it and I've read it. I've just not had a chance to actually play it myself. But some of the things that I've spotted as I've gone through the rule book are some of the things that you've changed in terms of combat with the exploit system. I thought that was really neatly done. So I was wondering if I throw out a couple of things that I noticed from the book, if you wouldn't mind letting myself and those who also maybe haven't seen it yet know what it's all about. So for me, the first thing is exploits. Explain what the exploits are in the combat system.
All right. So the exploits are supposed to cover all what would normally be a whole bunch of little rules about disarming and tripping and pushing and actually more than that, but they're sort of split up into three different things. The first is minor exploits, which are what I was just talking about. If you want to trip someone or disarm them or whatever, the GM just makes a ruling. It's usually an opposed check. You make the check. If you do it, the thing happens. And very importantly, this combat option is in addition to your normal damage. So you don't have to choose. This was a specific design choice. You don't have to choose between doing damage and trying to get your enemy down to 0 hit points and doing something cool. So, if you want to push him over the ledge, or you want to slam him into slam a bookcase on him, or throw him into the fire, you do your normal damage, but then you also have a chance of doing this extra cool thing, which is the minor exploit. But the drawback is that if you, and I think in LFG, we tweaked it for lowlife 2090 actually later, but basically if you have a critical fail on that check, something bad happens to you. And also if you fail, you can't try again until something significant changes in the combat in your favor. So you might want to think about when you want to use your minor exploit, because if you stuff it up, you won't be able to use one later on. And then we have major exploits, which are the really cool things, but they cost a point of luck to use, and luck is a really rare resource in this game.
Yeah, it's kind of a meta currency that lets you do.
It is in many ways. It's when you spend it, it's gone basically until the end of the adventure. And luck is also your saving throw, so you have to balance out. We've got to make judgment calls on when it's worth using. But with a major exploit, you can cut off a ogre's arm, or giant scorpions coming at you, you can cut off his tail, or I don't know. Just it's permanent. Powerful options that are available to you. And like the minor exploit, if you stuff it up, well, you can't try again until something significant changes. So you might have to make a call, but you can certainly, plow your way through a bunch of dangerous enemies by using a series of major exploits. But if you do that, your luck's going to be reducing, and so next time you have to make a saving throw to jump out of the way of a boulder or something, you're going to be in a more precarious position. So that's the major exploits. And the last thing we've got, which I think can be good fun, is rescues. So they also use up a point of luck, the same as the major exploits. So you do have to choose, when you want to use them. But that sort of lets you retcon some negative event that happened for somebody else. So you can't use it on yourself. But if your henchman is about to fall down the pit trap, you can say, "Oh, can I do a rescue?" And you basically make a dex check to see if you can react in time. And if you do, then you make a luck check. And if you're successful, you have to be able to explain it within the
right.
What's going on.
You grab him by the scruff of the neck just as he's about to step off. And
Yes. And so you'd have to be sort of next to him or close by him in order to do that. But so you grab him at the last second and you drag him back. So it's that sort of thing. And, it came from that sort of, frankly, the major exploits is really a riff off of DCC's Mighty Deeds, which when I read that years ago, I always thought it was supposed to work in a narrative sort of way where you just said what you wanted to do, and then you roll the dice, and if the deed die was correct, reached the right number, you could do it. But I think sometimes, but anyway, then there's all these tables at the back of DCC, and I wasn't sure if you had to roll on the table or whatever. Anyway, but that's basically a riff off that, and then the rescues is just it's a classic thing out of movies, right? That somebody gets saved at the last minute. That's what that's supposed to represent. Yeah, so that's the exploits.
And so the luck, as you were mentioning there before, is in a way almost another attribute that the players have. It starts at 11 or 12, is that right?
Yeah, it starts at 10 plus half your level. So everyone's got the same luck. If you're the same level, you're going to start with the same luck. Yep. And
then every time you use a point of luck, it reduces it down by 1. So if you had 12 and you were successful or not successful, your luck is now 11. And
only if you succeed. So if you succeed on a saving throw, or you succeed on the major exploit or the rescue or whatever, it reduces by 1. But if you fail, you already have to cop the failure, whatever the effect of the failure is. So it doesn't reduce on a fail, it only reduces on a success. But let me tell you, it still reduces pretty quickly just based on, it depends on the adventure. But, and also, frankly, some players are more conservative. And, I've got some guys who don't use major exploits at all. They will occasionally use a rescue to pluck a fellow PC from 0 hit, to prevent them from getting to 0 hit points. But, and then I've got other guys who, they want to do a bit of a flashy combat, and they'll be cutting limbs off left and right, and then they've lost 3 luck, but they decimated that combat and saved other people resources. So yeah, it's a bit depends on the player.
Yeah, whenever I don't play, I have nothing against playing it now. I don't care to run it, but I don't mind playing it. But when I used to play 5e, you'd see the same thing with people in there and the advantage system, where if people had advantage, there'd be times where they were almost saving it for that most opportune moment, but then that moment didn't come and they forgot that they even had it or what have you, because it just wasn't part of how they thought about it. But then you'd have other people that were just desperate to get advantage anytime they could, and we're almost farming it to a point where they can continue to do cool stuff with it. But the book also has a cool system with when somebody dies or when somebody's been knocked out, that you find out whether or not you're dead after. So if I get hit by the big troll and I go down to 0 HP, the fight goes on. After the fight is over, then what happens?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So this was specifically to fix the whack-a-mole problem, they used to call it on the forums. I don't know if they still do. Problem of 5e, where it's actually advantageous in 5e to drop to 0 and then heal you, because there's no negative hit points, right? So you can get all the way down to 3 hit points and then get dropped to like effectively -10 or something, but doesn't matter. We'll just do a bonus action ranged healing word and you're back up on 20 hit points next round, no problem. And you never have to make a death save, right? Well, you never have to make the 3 death saves, because someone's always got a healing word up their sleeve or a healing potion or whatever. And so you get this thing of people going up and down from 0 to up, 0 up. And it's just very, I don't know, not very, it just doesn't fit the sort of game that I would.
Yeah, you're exactly explaining part of the reason that I no longer play that game.
Me too. Years ago, I went, no, that's the end. I'm not playing that game anymore. I'll play it if everyone else wants to play it. I'll play it, but I won't GM it. I refuse. Yeah, exactly. I will play any other game. I'll GM anything else. But so in low fantasy gaming, once you hit 0, that's basically a hard cutoff. You're out of the combat, and there is no way in the mechanics of the game to get you back up again during that combat. You're out of the combat. So once you hit 0, you're out. So the idea of that is to encourage, if you do have some kind of healing, and we kind of assumed, or I assumed when I wrote it, that because it's sort of made for low magic settings, that people don't have access to much healing magic, if any. So once you get to 0, you're out of the fight, you're bleeding out, and then at the end, you can make if someone comes and checks on you, if the body can be recovered, then you make a con check, and if you succeed, you live. Okay, awesome. If you fail, you're dead. That's it. So there's only one roll, and if you fail it, you're dead. But I should say we do have a reroll pool in this game, and you can use one reroll. It's worth hanging on to a reroll in the game just in case you get put to 0, because then the chance of success is actually quite reasonable to not die. If your con is 10 or more, with a reroll, you've got about only 25% chance of dying. But even if you survive, then you roll on the injuries and setbacks table. And that is anything from, you've lost your hand to just broken bones, or, an infected wound, or even if you roll, I forget the exact numbers, it's something like 17 plus
internal bleeding or something I saw in there.
Oh yeah, there's all sorts of awesome injuries. But if you roll 17 plus or something like that, it's just a cosmetic scar. So you can also basically get nothing, but the odds are that you will suffer some kind of temporary injury that will probably last the rest of the adventure. But if you're quite unlucky, you might lose an eye or lose a leg. Actually, the leg's quite hard to lose because you might lose your foot or below your knee, but at least you can replace that with a peg leg, you know what I mean, and still be an adventurer. But yeah, so the idea is it is actually a big deal if you get reduced to 0 rather than that whack-a-mole style 5e where you don't care if you get reduced to 0, frankly, as long as someone's got a healing word.
And one of the other really cool things that I liked about this game is the way that you renamed spells. So the spells being a lot of the classic spells are in the game that people would recognize, but they're not by the names that they would recognize. You've got really cool ways of describing spells. What's some of your favorites, and what was the thought process behind doing that, other than just being able to make it your own?
Oh, look, that was just that's just a cosmetic change, really. Almost all the spells in the book are straight from BX style or second edition style spells. So that all your classics are there, really. We did cut the spell list down a lot, down to 20 spells per level, because, it's supposed to be a kind of low magic game. So we just I tried to choose what I thought were the most useful sort of thematic spells. And so the change was just for fun, really. I've read the Jack Vance books, some of them anyway, where the names of the spells are quite long and flowery or whatever. And so I just wanted to introduce some of those, that sort of feel to the magic. I don't know, to make magic more magical, I guess. I don't know. That was the idea behind it. I have to say, there's mixed reception to that. So some people are like, oh no, I just want to know what hold person is. I don't want to.
No, I think it's great.
What Crush of the Warp means. I'm like, it means hold person. But it's just for fun, and to try and lend magic a bit more of a mysterious feel to it, I guess. Yeah,
I really like it because it gives a sense of. I think people should do that more just on their own for their home games, to really tie the spells to the setting that they're in. And while we've talked a lot about LFG, there are a bunch of other products that you have up as well. The adventure frameworks, which look like one thing I really like about the adventure frameworks is that up front, as soon as you look at them, it tells you the danger level, the number of pages, is there a map, and a little brief description. They're all fairly inexpensive and easy to get off of drive-thru-RPG, but just having that up front, front and center of this is what the product is so refreshing to see.
Thanks.
There is so often you have no idea what it's almost like a mystery box at times when you're getting certain things, and I'm a sucker for having things clear and concise for what it is. It's just to save everybody time. I can look at something and go, that looks cool, but it's not for me. This looks cool, that's for me, and I'll grab that. And so I really, really appreciate having that clear information up front. But there's also a cool setting, speaking of settings, called the Midlands. I haven't read through it fully. I was browsing through the map. The map is gorgeous. Can you tell me a little bit about the Midlands? And was this a setting you had prior that was yours, and then you decided to make it public to everybody else, or was this something that came after LFG came around, and you're like, hey, we want a setting to kind of tie into it as well?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really proud of the Midlands, actually. It's probably sold better than it's sold more than anything else, frankly, that I've made. So a lot of people are interested in sandbox, sort of pre-made sandbox-ish settings, and low magic style settings than perhaps I thought when I first put it together. But you know what happened? So I'd done the LFG original, which was the sort of shorter version with mostly stock art, and I was in the process of making adventures for it, and so I made a little Patreon, and people were throwing money at that, and I was like, oh, awesome, and I can churn out an adventure every month, and that was really fun to do for ages. For like 2 years or something, I was just putting out little adventures each month. And anyway, after a while, I was like, I've got so many of these adventures, what am I going to do with them? So I decided to put the setting together that you could then drop the adventures into. And I did specifically want, at that time, it was probably my limited knowledge, really, ignorance. I didn't understand that there was quite a few sandbox style settings already available right in the fantasy genre. And so I thought, I'm going to make this fantasy, it's going to be awesome, and no one's done it yet. And anyway, but people had done it. Of course they had. So I wanted to make a sword and sorcery style, low magic setting that was a points of light setting with a lot of wilderness in between these isolated cities. And so, yeah, that's sort of how it came about. And I just mixed in I just stole stuff from everywhere, that I liked from all my reading over the years and watching the movies and stuff. And I tried to insert that into the setting. And that's right, Randy M did the original Midlands map, which is this beautiful isometric style color map of the setting. And then later on, when we did LFG Deluxe, we got John Stevenson, or Sir Inkman, I think is his moniker, to do another sort of more traditional top-down map of the Midlands as well. So so it was just something to play LFG or whatever system that you like with. But the idea is it was supposed to be a sandbox. There's no sort of one thing in hindsight, I don't know if it was a good idea or not. I think it probably was not a good idea. I thought I didn't know hex scrolls well enough, okay, and so it's actually this sprawling map, because if you look at the hexes, they're like 20-mile hexes or something, which when you look at the blogs about hex maps, everyone's like, you should use 6-mile hexes, and I just made this massive map, and it was anyway.
You can always take a large hex and shrink and blow it out, right? So having a wide area allows you to do more travel, lets you have that exploration and travel experience, and then it also gives enough space that if I want to drop my own adventure in, I can take, hey, there's this hex that Steve created, doesn't have anything in it. and I'll blow that out and put whatever I want into it. So I wouldn't feel too bad about 20 Mile Hex. I've got no issue with that because that's roughly your day's travel, right?
Yeah, well, that was what was in my mind, and I purposely didn't put any coast on the map because I wanted people to stay. I thought, oh, you want to keep them in this area, but I mean, there's really a bit of an unspoken agreement, I guess, between everybody that they'll stay within the area. So instead, I just stuck a massive inner sea in the center of the map. So if you want to do your water travel, water adventures, you go to the middle, and otherwise you've got, mountains, forests, all the swamps, different terrain types sort of around this sort of central inner sea.
Yeah, so if you're Canadian or American or familiar with the geography at all, basically the Great Lakes are sitting in the middle of this setting. Just one giant lake that all the shipping and trade can be cut across the various cities that's kind of surround. But yeah, definitely check it out. There's the mountains, the names of everything is also very cool. I don't know. I just really enjoyed exploring through the map, and I've got to dig deeper into that because settings are something. I'm a sucker for a couple of things. Monster books. If you make a monster book, I'm probably going to buy it. And settings and stuff like that are really cool. I just like it. For me, they are touch points for me to steal ideas from. I blatantly will just go, oh, that was cool, and I will steal that.
I am exactly the same. I love reading good setting, like Simbaroon. I love the Forbidden Land setting.
Yeah.
All those, and because you can take your system and apply it to any setting basically. So when you find a good setting, Dark Sun, Planescape, even, although that's a bit urban for my liking, but overall, it's just gold. It's gold because it saves you so much work, and everybody's on the same page, straight away.
So with LFG, would we say that is if you were going to describe the target audience that you want to be picking that game up, is it a 5e group that wants to try to experience a little bit more of maybe an older style or a lower magic game, or would you say it's more for, say, somebody who's been playing older style D&D or OSR games but wants to maybe up the feats and that sort of thing, or is it both? Why not both? Right, that classic meme. But is that kind of the target audience that you're aiming at?
I think when I wrote it, I was thinking about 5e people who wanted a more dangerous, lower magic game. That's what I had in mind. And then I think also we've probably got some people who are much more OSR, old school style, who have also gone, oh yeah, okay, I like the exploits, or I like the little unique features or whatever. I'll steal that for my game. So they've taken part of the mechanics and added it to their existing game, as many OSR gamers will do. Everyone's playing a hack of something. So I think the original audience that I had in mind, was because same as myself. I was a 5e player. I was like, no, I don't like this anymore. I want something lower magic. I want something a bit more dangerous. So that was the basic idea. But it actually has turned out to be this very weird marketing problem with the game, because I can't say it's an OSR game or it's a 5e game. It's this weird mashup of some modern mechanics, some old mechanics. And so I had to explain it. I had to say, this is what I made. I hope you like it, but I don't know what to call it.
You kind of predicted exactly what I was going to ask. I was like, what is the marketing strategy there in terms of how you expose it? But LFG isn't the only game that you guys have out, though. Following a very similar system is Lowlife 2090, cyberpunk type game. I've not played a lot of cyberpunk games. I've played a couple of sessions of Shadowrun, and while I really dig the setting and the idea of the futuristic cyberpunk world, even mixed in with some fantasy, my first experience being with Shadowrun and having to actually install an application on my computer to create a character, I was ready to scream and just. It was so bad. The game setting and the stories that can come out of it were fun, but the mechanics around playing the actual game were very frustrating to me. Lowlife is based largely on the mechanics of LFG. How would you, knowing what I just told you about my experience with Shadowrun, pitch me on why I should go play a different cyberpunk game that maybe you've created?
Yes, you should choose Lowlife 2090 because, and look, I have to say, first up, I'm a massive Shadowrun fan, and I played it with my mates for, I don't know, at least 3 years. Second edition, we played a lot, and we played some of the other editions, but it's always been, Shadowrun's always been a hodgepodge of rules and really difficult to get your head around because there's so many different subsystems, right? Which is the bane of all sci-fi games, because it's not just a fantasy game. Is just simpler because you've got, melee, ranged, magic, and travel basically is your main things, and monsters. But in a game like Shadowrun, especially, you've got all those things, but you've also got cars, you've got vehicle combat, you've got hacking, you've got the intricacies of the city, which you do sort of have in fantasy as well, but it's worse in a modern or near future setting. So yeah, I love the setting. I love Shadowrun setting, but the rules are really difficult. Well, I mean, you know what? We did handle it. Back in university, we had all the spare time in the world, and so it was okay. We could play it. But these days, of course, much older now and don't have that time. And so Lowlife is a similar, it's in the same genre, cyberpunk and sorcery, but it's way simplified because it's what you already know. It's a D20 system. You roll under for attribute checks, you roll high for attacks. But it is different because it's got those extra subsystems, but we've tried to make them simple and easy and quick to use. So your hacking system is really just opposed checks and the ticking off the use of abilities, and driving vehicle style combat is really just done with tables. So in a way it's procedural. Your positioning is abstract, how far you're away to the other vehicles, and then when your vehicle gets hit, if your vehicle takes damage, you roll on the vehicle damage table, and then you see what happens. And that's actually something we kind of stole from Warhammer 40K, where I just remember, because I played that a lot when I was young, the way that the vehicles are damaged in that game is that you roll on tables to see, does the Dreadnought's arm get blown off, or does the, speeder bike thing lose its engine or whatever. So we have adopted a similar, rather than just, a vehicle's got 20 hit points and you tick off the hit points. Instead, you just roll on the table and see how damaged it gets until eventually they're destroyed, right? But,
right.
You might crash, you might lose a tire, you might, whatever. So we try to simplify. It does. So there's that cinematic sort of, feel to it. And hopefully that comes across to the players so that it sort of runs along fairly smoothly, and you don't need all these maps and things because the distances are just, close, near, far, very far. And so the idea was that Lowlife 29, you could play a game similar to Shadowrun or some other. You can take out the magic entirely if you want to and just play a cyberpunk style game, but with a reasonably simple system. It's D20 based, so you're already familiar with it. If you're coming from certainly LFG, you're familiar with it, but even from 5e or from most OSR style games. But we did have to tweak a few other aspects to it, because in the way that we always played these kind of games was that they were mission based. So we did not adopt, I know some people do adopt a sandbox style for their sci-fi.
But yours is more of like a TV episode type thing.
It very much is. Yes, absolutely. That's it exactly. It's like an episodic thing where today's mission is this, we're the A-team or whatever, and we're going to do the thing. And so it's quite confined in that way. But it means that we had to make the game, I feel like it needed to be more deadly, significantly more deadly than LFG, because you just don't have that many fights usually. It's a lot of talking to people, finding out the information, mystery style, figuring out who the actual bad guy is, if there is one. Everyone's usually a baddie, really, in these cyberpunk style games. And then, you might have a shootout with someone or whatever, but we don't anticipate that there's going to be as much combat. So if you do have a combat, in order to make it matter, it's significantly, guns are really dangerous in this game, and armor is not that. It's all right, but it's not. It's certainly no guarantee that you're going to survive that encounter. So we did make a few tweaks to it, but basically, yeah, we tried to make something that's a bit streamlined because the barrier to entry, I think, for a lot of cyberpunk style games is that there's too many subsystems for the players to easily get a handle on, and also for the jam. You want to make it. I've become a big fan over the years of the emergent play style principle, and so I think you want to make I want to build in as many mechanics as possible that lead to easy improvisation. I don't want you to have to, if you have to make up a character like a cop or whatever to face off against your lowlife. It's got to be pretty simple. I can't be choosing 10 different skills and choosing all these bits and pieces from the equipment list. It's got to be pretty straightforward, or otherwise no one will play because it's too hard.
Right.
Too hard to run it.
So in the two games that we've talked about, we've got LFG, which we'll say is for 5e players who want to strip things down to be more simple and more old school and more low magic. And we've got Lowlife 2090, which is for people like me who saw Shadowrun and saw that I had to download an app to create my character and gave it the finger. And with both of these games, how has the reception been for like VTTs and stuff like that? How do you use virtual tabletops and things like that? Is that all kind of something that you're keeping in mind as you're designing the games and stuff?
I have to say, it's not something that I really had in mind when designing the games. No, I still like the idea of everyone's just sitting around the table in person playing. For me, That's the best way to play. I understand the advantages and have played plenty of online games, and there are certain advantages. You can do sound effects. You can put the ambient music in the background. There is certain advantages to it. But for me, nothing beats the just playing in person and everyone's laughing and throwing dice and whatever. Look, no, we don't really take that into account. Only to the extent that I wouldn't go using any crazy dice in a system because I just know that you won't be able to recreate that very easily on a online environment. But yeah, you know what? The LFG and the Lowlife, they're only on Foundry and Roll20 because we have some really awesome Discord members who volunteered to do it. And you know what?
I know a lot with Foundry. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, amazing dudes like Dab. I don't even know his real name, but Dab from our Discord has made a Lowlife 2090 and a LFG Foundry, application. And I threw him a few bucks going, oh, thank you so much. Here's a few dollars, but it's nothing like what, you would really have to pay, I assume, pay a proper, professional developer to go and do it all for you, like 5e and all that would be doing. But it's only by, the grace of these awesome players, frankly, that we're able to put those systems onto those platforms. And yeah, I do love playing on those platforms. They're awesome. But if I have the choice, I would rather play.
Yeah, I agree with you completely.
Yeah.
So playing in person, what was the scene like growing up in Australia for role-playing games? Because I'm always curious in terms of, what was the dominant game being played in a certain area, because it differs in different parts of the world. I think a lot of folks in Canada or the US just assume everybody's default introduction was D&D, but in other parts of the world that's not the case. What was it like in Australia? Was D&D the mainstay? Was it more of a Warhammer, or was it more of like, what was the introduction to gaming in that area?
As far as I could tell, and I didn't go to that many conventions when I was young. I was mostly just playing with the group in high school, and a couple of other people come in and out. D&D was seemed to be the main game. So basic at first, but then once, because it was 88 by the time I was in 1988 by the time I was in year 8, and then 2E must have come out around that time, because and I forget exactly, or that's when I discovered it anyway. And as soon as we discovered this advanced version of the game, we just went, oh, we must play the advanced version. We can't play the basic version anymore. For better or worse, that's what we did. And then we played 2E for like 15 years or something, played for a very long time. We did try other games. We tried, werewolf and vampire. We tried a little tiny bit of Warhammer. You know what? I was very foolishly put off by the Germanic names and the outrageous mohawks of the dwarves and all like that actually put me off the game. And I wish in hindsight that I'd stuck with it, because I think now I would have liked it better. I would have actually preferred that style of game. Although 2E was quite a gritty, relatively moderate Magic style game, I suppose, compared to the modern version of D&D. But yeah, I wish I'd played that more, but I didn't. But yeah, so my experience was it was mostly D&D that was being played, but there was a little bit of Warhammer floating around. Oh, certainly there was Warhammer the Miniatures game. That was being played. I didn't actually have a go at it at that age. In fact, I've never played Warhammer the Miniatures game.
I'm so intimidated by that game.
Oh, right.
I love, I find the art side of it, like the miniature painting and what have you. I'm enthralled by those who can do it. But I'm so intimidated to even go and ask how to learn how to play that game. It feels like it seems like it's so much, but yeah, it looks beautiful. Every time I've seen it, I've been like, I really should ask somebody to teach me how to play this. But
it is very fun. It is time consuming. I feel like it is a game best played when you're at school or university, when you've got extra hours really up your sleeve. Although having said that, games like my favorite miniatures game of all time is Necromunda. I don't know if you've heard of that one.
No.
But right. So it's actually just a little skirmish game you have about 10 miniatures, only 10, but they're all individualized little characters, and you're fighting over this hive city in the slums. You're like a gang and you face off against another gang, and you have all the terrain of this, like different levels of the city that you're in, and you're rolling dice and whatever, moving around. It's an amazing game, and it's like a little short version of Warhammer or 40K, but also your characters level up and they get injuries. So your characters can die, or you can, like, I've got these amazing memories of like Butcher Boy, who was this cleaver guy who got all the best, like he happened to roll the strength increase, and then he got the armor increase. He was like this devastating warrior, and then eventually he lost his leg, and that was the end of him. But
what was the name of the game?
Necromunda. And I would recommend, if you try and track it down, the old version seems to be the nicer version, but they did just re-release it about 3 years ago or something. Yeah, but it's like a shorter, and you only need 10 guys. Yeah, you don't need very many, and there is this RPG style element because your characters, can get experience or die or suffer injuries. It's just super fun. Yeah, so actually we were playing that too, of course, around the time, but yeah, there's definitely, I understand totally. I did have a Tau army in 40K and a Chaos army, but I just don't have the time to paint 100 miniatures.
Yeah.
Like, no chance. There is zero chance of that happening. I just have to spray paint them all black. And
yeah, primer only.
Yeah, primer only. Yeah.
So speaking of board games, and also what I mentioned earlier about getting your hands for the first time on like a hardback book, I saw you having a video up of the board game Old Mage that you're working on creating. It's funny because I just had a conversation earlier today with Justin Alexander from the Alexandrian blog, and him and I were chatting, and board games came up in that. And it seems like almost every interview I've had over the last little bit, somebody's mentioned some form of board game, because we're all geeky.
Yeah.
Like that. We all play it. Yeah. I've got a huge board game collection. So whenever I saw that on there, I was like, that's really cool that you're making a board game to begin with. But I can't imagine how cool it was to get the box with all the stuff in it and get to lay it out. So can you tell me first what Old Mage is, and then what the process was to get that box? Like how does one go and build a board game? at this point.
It was so cool. I cannot lie. I was so happy to see that box come in. I was like, oh my God, here it is. It's actually, we're going to make this thing. So it's something that I always wanted to do. I played a lot of board games growing up, Talisman, Hero Quest, or Runebound, all these different fantasy or whatever. We played, what's it called? I forget, but it's the one, oh God. Anyway, it's a 40K board game where you're on a spaceship and there are gene stealers. Anyway, it's like Aliens, but on a board game. Anyways, so we played all those when I was young. And I always thought if I had the chance, I would try and make a fun board game. And it's definitely a different kettle of fish because when you make the print-on-demand book, all you have to do is put together the PDF, put all your art in there, edit it. I mean, all you have to do, but there's a bit to do, but it's nothing like. And I have to admit, making a board game would be easier. I went, look, the rule book's 20 pages long. This is going to be a snap. And I foolishly thought it would be easier, but it definitely is just as challenging, or in many ways, I suppose it's more challenging because, yes, the rule book is short, but it's got to be really super clear and concise. And then you've got all the cards. If you're going to have cards in the game, they're their own little bundle of of fun, trying to put all your cards together and present them in a way that seems to make sense and that people like, because the art is so important. But it's been super fun and excellent. I do recommend having a crack at it. Anyone who's thinking about it, will we make money off this game? I don't know, because the thing about it is, unlike a print-on-demand book where there's no minimum order because you don't keep any stock, with the board game, basically the manufacturers in the US and in China and a few other places, they all have at least a minimum 500 unit print run. So you have to sell 500 of these or it's not getting made. I mean, I can make a prototype for $200 US, but in order to make it at a feasible cost, you have to create quite a few units. And the more if you make 1,000, it's cheaper. If you make 2,000, it's even cheaper. But you have to make, and actually a lot of the manufacturers won't even make 500. They just said to me, no, the minimum is 1,000 or the minimum is 1,500. But there's some who will do 500. So we've just got our fingers crossed that, eventually when we run it to Kickstarter next year, that at some point we'll be able to get at least 500 people who are interested in it, and that we can make it. But it's basically, so it's called Old Mage because everyone plays like an ancient sorcerer. The High Wizard has died, and you're all competing to be the new High Wizard. So it is, it is relatively high luck game. It's high confrontation, so it's player versus player, but there's a lot of exploring as well. And if you listen to what the board game gurus say on various YouTube channels and forums and all that, they're like, no, don't make a player versus player. Don't make a high luck game. That's not what you want. But but frankly, that's what I like. That's what I played Talisman. I played Hero Quest. I played Runebound and all those games, and they were high luck games, and there was a fair amount of player interaction. And so that's the kind of game I want to play. So that's what we've made. And
at the end of the day, you have to make something that's fun for you, and then hope that there's an audience for it, right?
And that's all our products, right? So we made what we want to play, and we just hope that there's enough people out there who also want to play these games. And if there isn't, we won't make it. But you know what? If we don't end up making it, I have to say I've still learned so much about the production of physical assets that I'm now really confident of making, for example, a box set. So if we want to do, and Midland's been around for a long time, a lot of people have asked for a deluxe version of that. There's every chance in 2023 that we will do a box set revamp of Midlands with a massive fold-out map with some custom dice or whatever. I completely understand now how you get that made, which I did not understand until I started this process of making a board game. So even if this old Mage doesn't get anywhere, it has been a blast to make, and I am now armed with the skills to move my other, go into other areas of RPG production, which was just not feasible before. So, yeah, definitely worth it. If anyone's thinking about it, I think by all means have a crack at the board game and see what happens, because
I honestly sat and thought about that, and just some of the constraints that has to be on your mind as you're going through them, in terms of the weight of the box for how you could physically ship it. Do you use what size tokens you can use for things because it contributes to weight? Does your board fold, because now that's an extra complicated, like all those little things they're not part of the gameplay, but they directly impact it based on the choices you make, and then that cascades everything else down. So I think it is probably harder than writing a game book, in the sense of you have all the same design problems you have to solve, but then there's a whole other layer of the physical design and how that impacts the design that you had for the game in place there as well. So huge kudos for getting as far with it as you can. I can't wait to see the Kickstarter for it. And yeah, if it doesn't cost me a new car to ship it to Canada, I will definitely jump in on that as well.
Yeah. No, good.
The box set that you mentioned, though, that's an interesting idea as well, because there's been a bunch of games recently that have come out with, like, from small publishers that have box sets. I'm speaking with later on this week with Isaac Williams, that created the Mouse Rider game, and he's got a box set out as well with cutouts like for his inventory system, what have you.
Oh, awesome!
Which is really neat. So yeah, it's interesting to see games that can come out with physical items. You mentioned earlier the sorry, I'm looking over at my shelf because my brain just blanked. Forbidden Lands. Sorry, I had to look over my shelf to see the name of my brain retrigger. But the Forbidden Lands, I mean, that's a box set that's beautiful in what it includes on the inside, both from the books and the map and everything else. So yeah, I think if you're able to take that knowledge and loop it in there, that.
Oh yeah. Cool. Absolutely. I was blown away by the Forbidden Lands. They basically made a bit of a Midlands low fantasy style game that's better than our game in many ways, and they made it at a production level. The quality of production is so sweet, and I can totally see why it blew the minds of gamers and sold so well, because it's just a beautiful game. And I've got mine here, sitting on the shelf, and it always was a mystery to me how that sort of game gets made. But now, having
and at the price that they make it.
And exactly right, at the price. So if you make enough of them, it becomes reasonably cheap, inexpensive to produce, right? The shipping is still a lot, but at least the base cost to create it is not too much. But having talked to the board game companies now, and I've extended our inquiries to other to publishers, so not print on demand publishers, to we've got the guys in Switzerland who do the box set, they do the maps, they do the jam screens, they do all of it. It's just a matter of making sure that we can give them the the materials that they need to then turn it into a physical product. And it's just, I'm really looking forward to 2023 and what we can do with either a setting or a revamp of something, and having because you can put little custom oracle dice in there, or a little card set to do with wilderness encounters or whatever. Like, there's so much that could be done with a box set, as opposed to just printing a physical book. So it's exciting. I think it's exciting times.
So Steve, I'm not sure how many of you mentioned you had listened to one episode. I've become a thing now at the end of episodes with interviews with folks, is that I ask, what is a question that I should have asked you, or what is something that nobody else asks you about that you're like, I would really wish somebody would ask me this so I can go on about it a little bit. Is there a side of Steve that he wishes more people heard, or is there a question that people just aren't asking that you're like, will you please ask me this so I can answer it? What would a question like that look like for you? And use this as your opportunity to, expose us all to it. What do you wish I would have asked you, Steve?
I wish I'd listened to the end of the last couple of podcasts because I'm completely unarmed of this question. Oh, I don't know. A question that I wish you had asked. I don't know. I mean, I suppose I honestly don't know. I mean, I suppose in terms of I suppose a question about how my experience has changed in gaming over the years. Don't often actually get asked that. So my attitude has actually changed a lot. I think when I first started, I was very much on the bandwagon with everyone else about, oh, what's the latest version of this game? I'll play that, and leaving the old versions behind. But especially in the last couple of years, having seen what Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro their plans are for D&D, I'm completely opposite that now. I'm fully entrenched really in the old school style of gaming, and I focus on emergent play and improvisation, and hex crawls, sandboxes. I don't want anything to do with adventure paths or focusing on necessarily character development or that sort of thing. I'm more interested in, this is the world that you want to play in. You toss the players in there and they wander around and do whatever they want. And sometimes they survive, sometimes the characters survive, and sometimes they don't. So that's one thing which I think is something on a fundamental level. My style of gaming has changed over particularly the last few years. I think it's become, I don't know how to express it. It's become clear to me that I prefer that style of game. While before I was a bit wishy-washy and playing all different stuff, I've figured out, I think, what I want to play, and that will inform what I make next. Yeah, that's the best way to put it.
Okay, very good. So with new exciting stuff coming in 2023, where do people keep up with you? Where should they go to find announcements on when the Kickstarter for the board game might come out? Or where can they go find more information about Lowlife or LFG and everything else? Point them in the right direction.
That's a good question in a sense. The Pickpocket Press, if you type in Pickpocket Press, it'll come to our website, which is where I put it used to be every month I'd put up a little post about what's going on and trying to highlight what other people in the community are doing. But I've got so busy with real day job work and then other work and family commitments and so on. That's sort of blown out to every 2 or 3 months, really. But that's probably the easiest way, is just to keep an eye on that. But also, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on MeWe. I think we were on Google Plus many years ago, but unfortunately it disappeared. It was such a shame. But yeah, so it's Facebook, Twitter. Oh, Discord, of course. Oh my gosh, I shouldn't forget about that. There's a lot going on the Discord. Probably that's the place where most of the chatter is happening, actually. Reddit. We've got a Reddit entry there as well. So yeah, they're the main spots where you can hear about what we hope to do next.
Sounds good. I will try to include as many, if not all of those, down in the show notes as well.
Oh, cheers. Yeah.
Steve, thank you very so much for coming on the podcast. I hope this was fun for you. It was for me. And when you get closer on the board game, let me know. Let's come back. If there's a way that I can kind of mess around with it, or if you've, as an idea, I don't know if you've looked at it all, but there's an awesome piece of software called Tabletop Simulator.
Yes.
If you get that up running, if you're able to get that up running with a demo of the game or something, I'd love to try it out. And
yeah. Actually, no. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be on the show. I thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to have a chat with you, Kevin. And I should say, actually, the game is already on Tabletopia, which is like Tabletop. But I should say it's only on private. I'm just playtesting with some mates at the moment. But like when we get closer to the, I don't know, we're probably looking at a late February maybe Kickstarter. When we get closer to that, we'll open that up to everybody. And absolutely, I'd love to jump on there with you and let you have a crack at it and see what you think.
Sounds like a plan. We'll do that. Hopefully by that time I should have, I want to, in the new year, I want to get the YouTube side of things going. So maybe I'll do that up and I can show it on YouTube
awesome.
or something. That'd be great.
Awesome. No, that's really good. Well, thank you so much.
No problem. Well, I'll let you get back to your day. It's evening for me, but it's just middle of the day for you. So enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, and I will talk to you again soon, sir. Thank you very much for coming.
All right. Thanks, Kevin. Cheers. All right. Bye.
All right, folks, that's going to wrap up this episode of the Redcaps Podcast. I hope you enjoyed, you learned something, and that you are eager to come back for more. www.theredcaps.net has all the links to all the ways that you can contact me, and I would love to hear from you. Thank you very so much for listening. And remember, never let your caps dry out. Stay safe. Have fun. We'll talk again soon.